Hello, this is the second episode of the Layover podcast. Hello, Alex, how are you?
Good. Yeah, we made it to the second episode. Hooray.
Well, that's quite an achievement by itself, right? It's the first layover of the show, actually,
There
because
you
it's
are.
two leg. Yeah, exactly. So continuing in our tradition, I mean, the tradition we're actually setting up now. The news of the week. You had a very good news of the week first.
I've been waiting for this one for like 10 years, but it's finally happening. There will be a new Air Force One,
Haha.
the American presidential plane, which is going to be a 747-800.
Haha, we talked about that last week, about
Which
that plane we both
yeah,
like.
I think surprised quite a few people. I think we all thought it's either going to be a 777
Yeah.
or a 787. So when this came out, it was first broken by, I can't remember who it was, but then the U.S. Air Force came out and said yes, it is true. We are gonna to move to the 748, and I think it's the four engines that they were
Yeah.
most interested in. But the current one is the official designation is a VC-25, but it's a highly modified 747-200 that has been in use since 1990. There's two of them, and they've been in use so they're going to earn their retirement after a lot of hard work.
What
But
what
that's
what
cool.
what what why do you say that they were interested in the four engines?
They didn't come out and
What do you
explicitly
assume?
say that, but there was a hint that four engines is kind of what they were after. Um, the RFP was four-engine wide-body aircraft is what was needed for Air Force One's mission, and so I couldn't imagine them going for a 340 or a 380.
Well, that would
I
have
would it wouldn't, but they didn't dismiss it. They put it out, and of course, surprisingly, quote unquote, the 747-800 was what it was. I think it's going to be quite a few years before it actually comes into action. And there was an interesting comment that perhaps it was even you that made this, that once that 747-800 rolls off the line, that we might see the end of the 747 line.
Yeah, I read something about that. That's apparently, I mean, of course, all these are rumors that apparently since that plane is not a very big success, because basically besides Lufthansa for the non-cargo version, there's almost no orders.
Yeah.
So there was like a rumor that they might kill the program off, or maybe just keep it just for cargo. We don't know. But the reason I've asked you about this four engine is because we said last week the industry is going the other direction, looking obviously for more efficiency with two engines. Do you think it's a safety feature to have four engines?
I th Generally, no, I don't think so. I think that with the reliability and capability of modern aircraft engines, with all modern two-engine airplanes can take off one engine, and I think that that's remarkable. And I don't think that there's a case for redundancy anymore. But I think the requirements of the United States Air Force for the presidential airplane are going to be a little bit different than, Virgin Atlantic's requirements for for an airplane or anybody else. So I think that they may have slightly less efficiency concerns and more safety, redundancy, and kind of operational readiness that might skew towards a four-engine airplane. But it's exciting. It'll be neat to see a 748 in Air Force One's colors.
Yeah, though I don't think either of us will ever get the chance to get on board. But I mean,
No,
neither of us actually have been on a 747-800 yet. I mean,
not
you and
yet.
and we both would like to. So I hopefully it won't be the Air Force one, might be Lufthansa actually, but well, it will be good enough. Another tidbit, which is nothing to do with an aircraft this time, is I mean, we both live in London, and if you guys listening to us have been living here, there's quite a debate about, the Heathrow versus Gatwick, second runway for Gatwick, a third runway for Heathrow. You can even see like a lot of posters in the tube and etc. etc. And Gatwick just made an announcement that they were going to basically go for the world's largest self-service backdrop zone. So they're really pushing the envelope, saying that, I mean, we know that Gatwick has more of a low-cost profile than Heathrow. I wouldn't say that it's only low cost. That would be more Stansted or Luton. But they are really pushing this envelope. They say they want to virtually eliminate all queues. which I don't know if it's going to work.
Ambitious
What do you think
statement.
about that?
Ambitious statement. I think that's going to come back and bite them in the rear end with saying something like that. It's so funny because the modernization of the South Terminal and the complete refurbishment of the security lanes there, it looks great, and when they have more than 3 lanes open, works brilliantly. You're through in no time. But they never have more than 3 lanes open, so they can redesign and reprocess the thing until the cows come home. But it seems like it's just pure staffing thing.
Yeah, plus, I mean, they made the announcement. They said that they would do it whether or not they would have a second runway, which decision should be happening soonish. And they don't have. I think if they get a second runway, it won't happen before 2019 at the earliest. But still, I have the same predicament as you. I mean, I'm not sure it's gonna. They say that they will have queues cut down from 45 to 7 minutes, which obviously would be a dream for any passengers. And I know you take that airport quite often. I have. I mean, I guess it's mostly in this war of words we're seeing between Heathrow and Gatwick, which is quite actually fun to see, how they're each trying to up the ante against the other. And I guess that's maybe part of it more than an actual possibility. Not that they won't do it, but the actual result might not be the one they are promising.
Yeah, I think it's a big promise, and you're right. I think it's a strategic move in this broader battle for that extra runway, which was made even more complicated by EasyJet's comments last week that they would prefer it to be at Heathrow.
Actually, the overall sentiment. I mean, it's always hard to tell, but it seems that Heathrow in the past few months has been hedging over Gatwick in terms of popular support. I mean, it's still, of course, not clear cut because there's a lot of opposition. I live under one of the landing pathways from Heathrow, and I know that not a lot of people around me are really looking for an expansion of the airport. But it seems to at least that Gatwick is losing a little bit of support in the past few months, and maybe that's part of why they're doing this. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Well, that's something we'll continue. Obviously, both living in London, we'll continue monitoring just because it's really close to us. Next piece of news, Alex.
This makes me sad. I never like talking about when airlines file for bankruptcy, but this is the weirdest story. So it's Skymark Airlines, who are an airline in Japan, and they're kind of, what a horrible market to compete in when you have 2 massive incumbents with either direct or indirect government support in All Nippon and Japan Airlines. But they've been around for a while as kind of as close to Japan has as a low-cost carrier. And it's strange to me because they've shifted strategy so many times from low-cost carrier, and then they said, okay, we're going to go luxury long haul in 2010, and they ordered a bunch of A380s.
Yeah. You mentioned that last week. Yeah, that was a big thing. They were the first carrier in Japan to order an A380, which was a big piece of news, and then they didn't have the money to actually pay for it.
To pay for them, yeah. It's like they said, we're going to order 4 with options for 2, and we're going to use them on big international trunk routes like London, Frankfurt, New York. And it was like the worst strategic move because right at that time, a bunch of new low-cost carriers came in and squeezed them on the routes that they'd been operating for the last 10 years. So you had people like Vanilla, who were I think called Peach before that, AirAsia Japan, Jetstar Japan, who were coming in and sort of squeezing them. And of course, when they introduced A380 service or even talked about it, then JAL and ANA started to tighten the screws from that end. So they were getting squeezed at both ends, and they defaulted on the A380 orders. Airbus threatened to sue them. There was talk that JAL might do a strategic investment in Skymark, which they did, and that they would take the A380s. That all fell through. But and I don't think we've heard the end of the story, because the same week that they announced their bankruptcy restructuring, both JAL and ANA said that they were going to file for code sharing with Skymark. Same day. So there's something strange. This is domestic code sharing, so there's something there where I'm not sure what it is, but
It's a cutthroat market. I used to live there. Actually, a piece of trivia. I think one of the busiest, if not the busiest route in the world is between Tokyo and Osaka. I mean, you have actually 747s full of only economy, like a single class economy flying
That's
between
right.
the cities.
Boeing made that special version of the
Yeah.
747-400 without winglets and ultra high density seating just for that market, which is
Yeah.
unbelievable, isn't
Yeah.
it?
So which always kind of pointed to the question that maybe at some point one of these airlines would get an A380, because if they can actually fill an entire 747 for such a short route, why not the A380? Although maybe the economics are not there for such a short route. But I mean, it's it's a bit sad. I agree with you. I mean, though the market is really I would say one thing is, like, when you go there, it seems like every other city has an airport. It's just
Hmm.
almost insane. There's a lot of public investment. When I say public, by government, whichever level it is, to add airport capacity. And I'm not sure actually that there's enough people flying for that. I mean, it's a sad news, but as you say, I'm not sure we've heard the last bit about it. There must be a lot of back stuff happening in the back that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, for a more more trivial piece of news, that was just stumbled that upon. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you've ever flown American. I don't fly them a lot because I'm not a One World Alliance member. I mean, I have a few miles from BA, but not that many. Although I live in the UK, so it's pretty sad, but that's it. And they have one thing that I've tasted twice. They have this cookie that they do in first class in the US, whose first class is our business class in Europe, or whatever. And it's true that it was always very nice. The few times I flew them domestically in the US, and they apparently changed the cookie a few months ago, and it was a big uproar. I mean, every time there's these kind of things happening, obviously. So the cookie was not baked in the plane anymore. It was just heated in the plane, and that led to a lot of uproar, which is always very nice to see. Apparently, though, the reason that, and that's interesting, is that since U.S. Airways that has been acquired by American, apparently it has only a single oven on board, so they cannot actually accommodate to actually bake a cookie, and this is why they align. So American aligned its policies to the lesser aircraft, basically.
It's amazing what people will get pissed off about, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll get to a story about I fly Swiss a lot, Alex, and there's this famous Swiss chocolate to give and for everyone, so not only first class but for everyone at every flight. I'll get to a story, but the same thing happened. They changed the recipe and people are in uproar. It's always fun. It's a bit trivial, but it's always fun to see that, even though the U.S. Market in terms of the airlines are not really appreciated. They always say that there's a cutthroat business, that there's not enough. I mean, the quality of the airlines are not, in terms of customer experience, is not there. But still, there's a cookie, and people
Yeah.
really love their cookies, right?
And there's something, I mean, it's a classic tactic in the U.S. when you're selling your house. Bake cookies when you're doing an open house so that the house smells warm and inviting and tasty. And Midwest Express, or Midwest Airlines, who are our defunct airline in the U.S., they did bake the cookies on the airplane. So when you got on, the whole plane smelled like chocolate chip cookies. And boy, did that work well. I mean, not well enough to save the airline, obviously, but it was a nice little differentiator.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, moving on.
So this next piece is really kind of interesting. We offline, you and I talk often about the investment strategy of a lot of Middle Eastern carriers, especially Etihad and Qatar, who are doing strategic investments in airlines around the world. Well, Qatar Airways, it has been announced last week, acquired just under 9.99% of IAG, which is British Airways and Iberia's parent company. And that's huge for a bunch of different reasons. It was, I think, 1.13 billion pounds in value.
Wow.
And on the face of it, it's like, okay, this makes sense. You're One World partners. BA was your sponsor for entry into the One World Alliance. But IAG have a seat on Heathrow's board, and now Qatar Airways have an indirect seat on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And the CEO of Qatar Airways has been very vocal about his opinion that Heathrow should be a 24-hour operation, and now he has sort of an indirect influence over that which is very, very interesting to me. I think it's hugely beneficial for both airlines, for operationally from a slots perspective, code sharing, and that type of thing. But also, it will be very interesting to see what they do with the future of Heathrow when these guys together control an extraordinary amount of the slots that go into that airport.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, Etihad has been doing a lot of inroads in Europe. I mean, we both know they bought Alitalia, I think 49% was it, of Alitalia last year.
Yeah,
They also bought Darwin, which is a regional airline based in Switzerland that does, some very short haul flights. They renamed it Etihad Regional. I mean, they really try to expand. Only Emirates, actually. Emirates doesn't really invest in other airlines. They have this huge, of course, their huge fleet, and they're really focusing on Dubai and extending all over the world. Although they're starting doing some flights that are not leaving from Dubai, from Europe to the US, for instance. But really, Etihad and Qatar probably are looking to a different strategy and trying to expand differently. Maybe because the Emirates would be maybe too hard to beat on their own turf. I don't know.
yeah, and I think that it's an interesting strategy in terms of spread betting is not the right word, but it's strategic investments in other markets, especially for Etihad. It's all over the place, like the ones that you said, and also a fairly substantial stake in Virgin Australia as well. On the face of it, it seems pretty smart. You diversify as well, so. But this IAG one, I think, is going to be really interesting to follow to see the fallout and how it influences Heathrow's kind of future plan, especially with that runway decision coming up pretty soon.
Yeah. Plus, we mentioned last week that IAG was about to acquire Aer Lingus as well. So
yeah. So this quite a formidable team is coming together here.
Yeah. Exactly. Another. It's not exactly news, it is, but I didn't know where to put it. But I found it interesting that I read this article, it was on Skift a few weeks ago. And since you were just talking about the Gulf Airlines, the rise of the Gulf Airlines, which is a very big topic that we'll keep talking about, obviously, because it's one of these big trends in air travel. But so how do we compete with that, right? And so if you are a big airline, which is, I don't know, a BA or an Air France, or you might, you have a huge capacity, you can actually maybe play strategically different. But how do you survive if you're you're neither a low cost, so you're neither an EasyJet, Aer Lingus, or Ryanair. I just called Aer Lingus. Hello, LCC. Sorry for that, guys. But how do you survive? So if you're a middle-sized airline, how do you survive? And there was this interview from Peter Davis, and he said that one of the avenues that could be interesting is to follow the hotel route, which you have the big ones, so the very big chains. You have the boutique hotels with it's like it's just a unique hotel that has a very unique value proposition, and in the middle you have these groups of hotels. So you have a lot of hotels that are regrouped under brands that actually are some kind of like a overarching brand on top of it. So you align a lot of small hotels that used to be independent into a larger group, so you can align their strategies and align their pricing, the booking system, etc., etc. And he argues that one of the solution would be for these middle-sized airlines to actually align themselves. The obvious reservation is that the problem usually with all these middle-sized airlines is that they still have a very strong tie to nations, to states. Yeah. And how do you actually align, different states that will actually maybe make too much of a hurdle? But I mean, what do you think about just the general idea? Do you think it's something actually viable?
Well, no. And I'll tell you why. I think theoretically it makes a lot of sense, but the problem that you have is that hotels are very good at balancing creature comforts and brand with the local needs and requirements and of where they're physically located. An airline can't do that because you wake up, you go to bed in London and wake up in Singapore, and everything's different. And you're also catering to a much broader variety of person and needs and wants. I think domestically or even regionally, it could definitely work. Um, but if you go too niche, then you run the risk of not having enough custom to cover costs. A hotel, the physical building will amortize over the life of the hotel, whereas an airplane, it's not that efficient. So I think in terms of product offering, it might be a way of looking at it, but everyone seems to be going lowest common denominator these days. So
Yeah, because that's also my biggest reservation about the model is that at the end of the day, when you look at it, price sensitivity is still a major marker selling point.
yeah,
People are looking for a deal, and you can create a brand of regrouping a few European airlines and say, oh, they play with the tradition of this and that country, that region. Let's say, I don't know, the Baltics. Or at the end of the day, people still look for the cheapest deal, and
yeah.
the LCC have it figured out. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think people will endure a mediocre airline product because they know they're on it for a finite amount of time and they get to get off at the end. Hotels, a little bit of a different story.
Yeah, correct. So moving on to the second segment, the a little bit more innovation, AirTech, and all these branding as well. First, an app that I've spotted last week, which is called Hopper. There's always this big question, and you see like tons of blog posts and articles about when is the best time to buy an airplane ticket. Supposedly there's a sweet spot, 4 weeks, some say 6 weeks, and then it depends on which market you are, depends if you're flying domestic or international, etc., etc., etc. So there's this app that promises you to never miss a deal, and that basically algorithmically, I don't know how it works in the back end, but tells you in a nice graph, actually gives you like an idea when is the best pricing period for, say, said travel. So it's pretty well done. I haven't really tried because I haven't booked anything with it, but I would like to know what you think about the whole concept of this.
Don't you think it's weird that it's only an app
What
and
do you mean by that?
not like a website as well that you can book on?
Well, I don't know. Maybe okay. That's maybe the mobile first, the mobile only type of trend that we're seeing, obviously, and that's maybe a better way to.
Okay. No, looking at it is mobile first, but they do have a site paired. I mean, the strategy is sensible. I mean, as they say that a lot of these flight prediction tools that we've had, for the last 10 years now are looking at historical data, and these guys are looking at predictive data, which is sort of what's been available versus what's available now, and using that to sort of predict availability and price. So in theory, it sounds great, and this type of stuff is fantastic because you're right. There's no hard and fast rule when you buy. So if they can really turn this into a science, then they could do really, really well. The airlines will hate them, but they'll do really, really well.
Well, it's interesting. At least they give you like of course, since if you install it on your phone, they'll give you like a notification, like, hey, now is the right time to buy because it's just the cheapest we've seen on that deal, and predictably, it will actually rise again or something. I don't know. It's interesting. I've seen other websites obviously doing that. There's one that it's not mobile at all, but I really like. It's called adioso.com.
Yeah.
I love it because it has this thing that you can say, it's not something for everyone because you must be very flexible on your dates. But if you say, I want to go to, let's say, Hong Kong, since it's the name of the show this week, HKG, I want to go to Hong Kong anytime in the future for 5 days, minus plus one, and it will just, look at all possibilities and give you the cheapest deal for that, and they also can follow up on that deal and tell you can put a price alert and tell you that. So that's interesting. Obviously that's not, again, a model that works for everyone. Usually people have vacation days and they kind of just say, I want to go whenever it's possible. But it's a fine project, I think.
Yeah, I do too. I think even if they don't crack the whole when should I buy my ticket, just the pure amount of data that they're going to crunch will be so invaluable. The kind of data exhaust that they create is going to be really interesting to look at in the next few years.
Anyway, moving on to more virtual reality stuff.
Yeah, this is kind of cheesy, but it'll be interesting to see if it works. So Qantas and Samsung have teamed up to provide premium cabin passengers on selected routes with virtual reality goggles. for watching movies and looking at destination videos for some of the places that the Qantas flies. And the press photos are they're very cheesy. Um, I think it's an interesting play. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere simply because if you've ever worn a headset or anything like Oculus Rift, there's a difference. The Oculus Rift is kind of revolutionary in that you're looking kind of 360 around when you move your head, the vision views. I think with these ones, it's more projecting a big screen in front of you, or what appears to be a big screen in front of you. But when you're moving and it's not, you can get quite disoriented. And I wonder if this is just going to make people feel really motion sick as soon as they are watching a chase scene or whatever in a movie, and the plane is turbulent or something like that. It's a nice little PR thing. I can't imagine it becoming the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, because that's the main topic of the week is the IFE, so the entertainment on board. But about VR, I mean, obviously VR is coming up. I mean, we've seen that Facebook bought Oculus Rift. There's, I mean, no consumer product yet. I mean, there's a lot of test products, but hasn't been released. So Samsung is releasing that one. Sony is releasing another one. It's a bit early, and maybe we'll come. I remember seeing. I will have to look it up, but I remember seeing. I think I've shared it with you, maybe even on Layovers. There was a patent by, I think it was Airbus, that they would actually have a patent for a seat.
Yes.
And you would sit there and you would be able to have an entire helmet going around you with surround sound and with obviously visuals and stuff. I don't think they mentioned in the patent, but I would have to look it up, so don't trust my word. I don't think they mentioned any type of entertainment. It was more about, oh, we'll make your flight look very smooth, even there's a lot of turbulences, because like exactly what you just mentioned, the fact that people could be feeling dizzy because of looking at a chase, a cop chase in a movie. On the opposite, they would say, oh, we'll make it so smooth that even if there are actual turbulences in the flight, you won't actually feel them, because we'll put you in a mood that is almost bliss.
Yeah, interesting.
Again, it's just a patent, right? But I mean, we'll see. Again, we'll talk that about in a few minutes. I'm not sure. It's a lot of investment, a lot of weight. I'm not sure a lot of people actually. But I mean, it's a nice marketing play, though.
Yeah, we're talking about it. It's an interesting one. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Another talking still in the plane, but a different part of the experience of the plane is. Do you still watch the because you're a frequent traveler? You still watch the safety movies, Alex?
I do. I do. I watch the safety demonstrations. I listen. I check out the safety card.
I mean, especially in long-haul flights. In short-haul, there might not always be movies. Still, I can still see demonstrations being made. But the movies, there's been a whole, in the past, let's say 5 to 10 years, there's been this new breed of movies that are either fun or There's, I think, Air New Zealand does one with The Hobbit and all these Lord of the Rings. I've seen the Delta one that goes 80s, where you see Alf and other. Obviously, the Virgin ones are very, very, very famous. Starflyer, I flew them in Japan. It's kind of a low cost. They have ninjas all over the place. I mean, but it's true that besides that, there's a lot of difficulty to actually make people watch them. And you can see that if you look around you, the people are still either reading their newspaper or with their headset on and just not paying attention anymore. So I'm not sure the answer is there, but there's this company that's released an app called Life Vest, which is basically makes I haven't tested it. I've only read about it. I didn't even look for it, but it would be to engage the passenger more with time challenges and a bit more an experience of what would you do in case of an emergency, how fast can you get out of the plane, etc., etc. Do you think it's actually something that would work? Actually, I'm very doubtful.
I am too. I mean, if we can't get people to watch a 90-second safety demonstration that's happening right in front of them, and the only thing that's happening right in front of them, getting them to use an app, I think, is even more of a challenge. And it's a nice idea. Anything that gets people thinking about this type of thing, when it's not an emergency, is I think good, and I applaud their effort. But Well, I don't know if it's gonna.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, because they say that it helps keeping the attention alive, which is exactly what I'm sure airlines would like you to have. You're in a better attention span. But you play it once, and you beat all the records or whatever, and you're never gonna play it a second time. I mean, I don't think. I mean, it's a nice. I'm not criticizing them for trying it. Let's be clear.
No,
I'm
it's a
just
good
saying
effort.
that it's. I'm not sure it actually solves the issue of people not really paying attention to the safety procedures at all.
No, me either.
Anyway, moving on. Go on.
So, I was
Yeah.
interested in this statistic that I stumbled across last week that uh, for in-flight Wi-Fi installation, the U.S. is way ahead of the game compared to anywhere else in the world. My baby, the Virgin America, launched with Wi-Fi, so they are the only airline in the world with the entire fleet is hooked up. But I was really surprised to hear that the U.S. leads it. I think Alaska, Virgin America, and United have the majority of their planes have Wi-Fi and electrical. Delta, I think, has most of their fleet, and Delta's fleet is gargantuan. Southwest are rolling it out. This stat was crazy to me that all of the most traveled domestic routes in the U.S., which is defined as those with at least 20 flights in each direction, now every single one of them has Wi-Fi, which is and the consumer set that expectation, because those are obviously business heavy routes. Outside of the U.S., there are only 9 carriers that have Wi-Fi in more than 20% of their airplanes.
Have you ever had Wi-Fi in a flight in Europe? I
No.
don't. I've never. Not that
I've had cell service. I've
Yeah,
had
cell service,
mobile
yeah.
service, but not Wi-Fi.
It's. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Wi-Fi in planes, but that's very personal. I'm
neither.
not against the rollout of Wi-Fi, obviously, because I think it's a choice. For me, the plane is one of the few instances when I can be on my own, so I don't
Well,
want Wi-Fi.
exactly.
But I mean, it's a choice. I just don't have to use it. But it's true that for once, sorry, I know the reason, the fact that I just said for once is not very nice, but for once, for that, the U.S. is actually really advanced. I've not seen a lot of Wi-Fi, obviously, in all my flights, but even in Asia Pacific. There's mobile service, like you said, cell service is almost all over. It's extremely expensive, though. I mean, if you ever look at the pricing for Emirates cell service, just don't even think about making a phone call because
It's an interesting. I think the U.S. has the distinct advantage of being a single landmass. On which the infrastructure can be piggybacked across existing GSM, and there's a finite satellite footprint there as well. Whereas in Europe, you're going across multiple jurisdictions, a distributed geographical footprint. So it's
yeah, and in Asia, you have basically sea everywhere.
Exactly. So it's way hard. It's got to be satellite based, and then the cost increases exponentially. So, but it's interesting. I think.
There was. I've read. I'll maybe share it in the notes. I've read Nick Bilton from the New York Times writing that he was really unhappy about the state of Wi-Fi. And actually, the quality of Wi-Fi has been decreased over time. I guess it's maybe also more people have been using it. They still have to increase capacity. And another tidbit of news, I think I've read also that GoGo. I think is it called GoGo because you fly in the US more. The
GoGo.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi provider. Is promising new kind of speeds or will be basically broadband, which actually raises an interesting question. Is they're still, and maybe you can correct me, they're still kind of blocking the voice capabilities. I mean, you cannot Skype, right?
Yeah, you can. I've Skyped.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it depends on the airline and how they have it done, but it was really interesting seeing how you sort of shape the bandwidth to the seat and to the connection. But yeah, you can do. I've done video conferences from 30,000 feet on flights from.
No, the reason I'm asking is because a lot of it's the same thing with cell coverage. I mean, there's always been. There's one thing is the technology, the other is the behavior. I mean,
well, yeah, exactly. That is a thing. It's like you.
Do you want actually having people around you babbling for an hour and a half and just? I mean, if they're just normal with a normal tone of voice, but we know that some people can be sometimes very rude in the, by shouting the entire time. So I mean, again, we'll see. I mean, it's too early to say, but I remember seeing a survey, I think it was a year ago, where a lot of airlines said, we could do it, we just don't want to actually have voice because we don't have the flight attendants to start being some kind of arbitrators of who's right and who's wrong into making a phone call, or what's the actual polite noise level for a phone call, etc. They'd rather not deal with that headache and just not let people do too many phone calls.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I hope we don't get to that point.
Yeah. Still about a bit of technology. I mean, I'm not using any of these, but there's been a flurry of smart carry-on luggages in the past 6 months. A lot of them come from crowdfunding initiatives, which why not? I'm just going to mention one that I had seen. I think it's called the Blue Smart carry-on. So you can do stuff like lock and unlock your carry-on with your phone. I'm not sure it's actually extremely useful, but why not? You can have there's a built-in digital scale, so you actually know how much your carry-on weighs. So why not? Again, this is something that could be useful. One that is maybe more useful for some people, there's a built-in battery pack that you can actually remove, because obviously some airlines, if you had to suddenly check the luggage in, some airlines actually have there's a limitation of what you can actually put in the hold in terms of batteries. So you have like a battery pack that you can recharge your devices. And there's something that I would not use, but I see people having troubles with it, is like the distance alert. So suddenly you get a notification if your carry-on is too far. And the big one is location tracking. So a lot of people say, I wish I could just, pinpoint where my luggage is, especially when, and it happens sometimes, when the airline tells you, oh, the luggage doesn't arrive with you, so you could actually use that and that would tell you where it is. I don't know. I mean, these are nice. It was funded well over the ask, so meaning that a lot of people are interested. I haven't actually seen the luggage. For the moment, it's only mock-ups. I think it got released, but I haven't really read any reviews yet. Would you buy something like that?
Not in a million years. It is like literally none of the criteria with which I use to make luggage purchasing decisions. I can't even fathom why anybody would want this. I mean, I should step back and say, in terms of a piece of industrial design, it's first rate. It's beautiful, it's neat, but I want my luggage to be robust and strong and reasonably light, reasonably attractive. I just can't imagine a scenario where I would ever want this over a well-made piece of baggage from Samsonite or any of those other guys.
Yeah, the other reason I would avoid, although most what I've described as features are not features that I would be honestly interested in, though I understand why some people would. The fact that I'm traveling often in locations like Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia and stuff, I've had in the past, whenever you have something that is not usual, security is sometimes looking at you like, what is that? And I don't want to ever have to check that luggage because it looks bizarre, and this guy saying he would rather not have it. We're not sure about a policy, so please can you put that in the holster instead of the cabin?
Yeah.
I mean, I get in the US, I know that the TSA has a lot of criticism, but at least it's a unified market, more or less. So you'd say that if that piece of luggage becomes prevalent, people will actually, security will actually usually judge it the same way in all airports. With the various airports I'm doing, I'm not trying. I still see some, there's still some security, some airports where I still have to open my laptop and actually boot it so people can actually see. So there's way too many variations for me. I'd rather to have something simple that looks the same in all over the world and that is, traditional for people to look at.
Yeah, exactly. Lots more things to break,
Move to the app of the week. It's not very new nor something completely mind blowing. But since we're at the beginning of the show, let's because it's only episode 2, I wanted to mention it before we move on to more fancy stuff. It's TripIt. I know, if you read any article about what is the app that you use, the apps that you use when you travel, most people, especially frequent traveler, will tell you TripIt, because it's basically an app where you can send your boarding passes, your booking tickets, etc., and it will automatically populate an entry and give you everything from, what terminal you're expected to be in, what are the times. You also track the times in most airports in the world, at least the Western world, tell you that the gate has been changed. You can receive an alert that the plane is late, that the plane is early, etc., etc. It allows you to have in one single app an overview of your travel, and you can also do that with train reservation. I've done that when I go to Paris. I use a Eurostar. You can add your hotels as well. It reads most of at least the airlines. I've never had any issue. Once with an Indian airline, actually a domestic Indian airline, I sent the booking and it wouldn't read it, but then you can actually do it manually. With hotels, doesn't always work, but I like it because honestly, even though I don't look at it anymore as something wow, I just find it fabulous for the fact that it just solves a big problem, a big headache for me. I don't have to look any information up. It just sits there. Do you use it?
Oh, religiously. It's a phenomenal app, and I'll never forget as long as I live. I went to Foo Camp, which is Tim O'Reilly's kind of unconference that happens in Northern California in 2006, July 2006, and I met Greg Brockway, who was the founder, and he gave this kind of pre-alpha demo of it to some of us who were fellow travel nerds. I remember thinking, God, this is going to be so useful, because you're right, you get all of these, flotsam and jetsam from all of the different travel providers of data, and you just forward the email to an account, and everything gets consolidated and cleaned up, and it's all there. And if I need to find my confirmation number or flight time or terminal, I don't go back to the email or the airline website. I just fire up the TripIt app, and there's everything. And the pro version, like you say, I've had times where the pro version has alerted me of a gate change before the airline does.
Yes. Before the airline, even before the leaderboards on the screens in the airport. The screens in the airport. If you use, for instance, London, all the airports in London, you'll see. The gate will be announced at, and you have to wait 30 minutes. And usually the app tells me that like way before. By the way, at the very beginning when I moved to London, it was like, it's impossible. They cannot know it that early. So I didn't trust the app, and I was waiting for the screen to say something. But actually, always checked out. So it's
a great app. Grab it, use it. It's phenomenal.
A few things more. You can also, if you're a business, you can have teams as well. You can actually have, for instance, if you have a family, if you have a wife, you can add someone who is in your close circle, so he is able to read everything, which applies as well for having an assistant. If you're not booking your flights directly, someone else can actually manage that for you. I mean, it's really a great app.
Yeah, so good.
Moving on, I mean, we mentioned already in the show several times about, we mentioned the Qantas and Samsung partnerships on the in-flight VR goggles, the attention, the IFE. So want to talk a little bit more about, I mean, the future IFE is a big broad term, but I mean, do you actually watch movies? Do you use the IFE at all when you do long haul flights? Because usually long haul flights we use it for, right?
Long haul definitely. I don't think so much for short haul because it's not really that available. But yeah, absolutely. I definitely watch movies. And that's about it. Movies and the map, the moving map, I think is great. And if an airline has it, the external cameras.
Oh yeah, the A380 has the one on the tail, which is one of the best. I mean, I think the A350 also has it because I've seen a picture from it. But I mean, this is I mean, I would use that as well.
So I do, and the airlines that have that live TV. There's something quite comforting about having live TV. You don't feel as kind of cocooned as you do with just linear or on-demand TV when it's live, and it's just like the real world is still going on. There's something rather comforting about that. So yeah, I do use it, I think.
But I mean, we kind of hinted at it when we mentioned the Samsung VR headset at Qantas. It's still a very big investment. I mean, it's not only an investment in terms of price, because the seats, especially if you were talking business or first class seats, are extremely expensive. The IFE is becoming more and more complex. If you've ever flown airlines from the Gulf, for example, the IFE from Emirates is considered yearly is always voted the best IFE, with whatever that means. But I mean, I've been using it. It's true. You have like 500 channels and like thousands of movies, and then you have shopping and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's a very complex thing.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of investment, and at the end of the day, it's also heavy in a plane. It's not like very light. It actually adds to the fuel cost of an airline. So that's the reason why we're seeing some more and more initiatives about, just basically getting rid of the screens overall.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think you're right. I mean, nowadays those screens are not screens anymore. They're Linux terminals or embedded Windows. So they're fully functional computers.
Windows, because I don't know if it ever happened to you when they have to reboot the thing.
Yeah, constantly.
This is where you see what's the operating system.
What the operating system is that?
The worst ones, sorry to interrupt, the worst ones are when they had, it was Air France at the time, they've changed it, so no harm to Air France here. But they had to reboot the entire plane when one single seat was actually faulty, and I was responsible for that. It just work. I said, "Can you reboot that?" I said, "Yeah," and I seen all the seats.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? Now, I mean, that's one of the many reasons why they went to individual computers so that you could reboot. Originally it was the whole plane, then the whole cabin, then the whole row, and now it's just individual seats that they can do. But each one of those boxes is around $10,000. So you do the math on a plane just from a 320 all the way up to an A380. That is not a small amount of money. And like you say, there's weight and everything. And I think so. Yeah, there are airlines that are going and putting in a single box with Wi-Fi now that Wi-Fi is okay on airplanes, and you just stream the content, be it movies, music, magazines, books, to your own personal electronic device. Yeah. Which saves on weight, it saves on cost, it saves on repair. The flight crew have to then become technical support. Yeah. But I think why isn't it working? Why can't I connect? Blah blah blah. I think there's a revenue opportunity there as well. You can do subscription, but I think because airline pricing has become so commoditized, there's an argument that IFE is one of the last differentiators that an airline can have: food, seat, including IFE. So for the airlines that can invest big money in IFE systems, they're going to continue to invest.
Especially in the premium cabins, obviously, because the premium cabins is where I don't see Emirates or Qatar Airways just removing the IFE entirely. I mean, plus, we're talking about screens that are like the size of your TV in your living room in these planes. So
I would also argue that it's a differentiator in economy class as well, because in the premium cabins you've got so much distraction with food and showers and bars and just all of the goofy gadgets that you've got around you. But in economy you don't, and I think that people, sure, the price is going to be a bigger differentiator than the quality of the in-flight product, but I still think that airlines are going to continue to invest in content, and I think also they're learning quite quickly that it really is about content, and some of the weird, slightly bizarre apps, quote unquote, that they develop that no one ever uses are going to get marginalized, and we're just going to be like as many TV shows and at the season level. And movies, and that's where the money will go in terms of content investment.
But interesting news is we mentioned GoGo earlier, and GoGo has this product called GoGo Vision, I think, and they actually provide this, or they provide Wi-Fi for airline carriers, and on top they say, okay, here's a service when you can also have entertainment content, so the movies, etc., etc. And but that's one avenue, and the other avenue, and because I still see it, maybe it's a midway, is actually you have airlines that just keep whatever system they already have and just add it on the current Wi-Fi, and they even provide you with tablets. I've been in some airlines when, I guess because it's a transitional period, you can request a tablet. Some will make it pay, some will just give it to you. So it's I think at the end of the day, like you said, I think the ones who've been investing in IFE heavily as a differentiator will continue to do so. The LCC, especially, that have never had IFE, might actually, tell you, oh, here's, you can pay $20 and have access on whatever device you have. In the middle market, we'll see. I think the Dreamliner, for instance, many of the Dreamliners that have been ordered do not have IFE in economy. I think they're moving all towards a model of streaming the bigger question is, and I agree with what you said, is certainly the IT support you have to provide. Because if you have a single device, if it's, I don't know, only iPads, it works. Suddenly you have someone who has a Samsung and the other guy has a Xiaomi and someone else has a Windows Surface, and it becomes a bit that complicated because the expectation is that my tablet will work, and if, especially on long haul, if it suddenly doesn't, then you're really, really, really mad.
Yeah.
We'll see. I think it's something we'll see more and more. I think that more and more airlines will go there.
Yeah, and I think that what we might see in bigger airlines is kind of this hybrid model of long haul planes have embedded IFE systems, the screen in the back of the seat, and then on their short haul fleets they'll offer the streaming service and Wi-Fi, and that way you can claim that you've got 100% IFE in all your flights, short haul and long haul, but you don't have that added cost of retrofitting your short haul fleet with 180 screens.
What about was it Virgin? I'm not sure. What about there was this airline that allowed you to basically contact any other seat in the plane?
Yeah, so I mean, when we launched Virgin America, we had seat-to-seat chat.
How did it work? Did actually people use that?
Yeah, not a whole lot, because it's quite difficult to type a message on a very small little keypad on the back of the IFE controller. But it was kind of fun. It was kind of fun to be able to know that you could do that, and I don't think that the development cost was huge, but I don't think anybody else had that that kind of feature. And there were occasional flirtations and all of that, but yeah, I don't know how often it was used.
The other thing that I think, because you kind of mentioned it, it was very hard to actually chat with the small controls that we've seen. Also, again, some airlines are now moved to like crazy tablet control systems, but that's the other thing, is that the experience on a tablet, and here I'm not making any preference in terms of who is the best tablet in the world, but it's just better. I mean, if you just think about the games that they provide you with IFE, even on the best IFE systems in the world, it sucks. I mean, we're talking about games not even from the 80s, and the experience, the way to actually to play lags, and the display is not working correctly. Whereas suddenly you can open a new, having games that are up to what you can find on the market, and that also opens an avenue for airlines, maybe especially LCC, to say, oh, we can do a deal with, I don't know, Rovio and Angry Birds, and you can have suddenly have new deals of, the traditional in-app purchase that you do personally. You can have a system like that in planes, and the planes just said, they can just talk to content providers, in that example, game providers, and say, hey, here, can you put our game in our Delta flight, and people will, buy to play or something. That's an interesting avenue as well for revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that content is going to be the way to go, as opposed to trying to develop all of these weird in-app, embedded app systems. It's much better to go with a proven, familiar app ecosystem.
Exactly. I mean, again, something that we'll keep talking about, because there are always news about this type of technology in the plane. Anything you wanted to add about this?
I'm just interested to see where we go in terms of UX. For some reason, airlines seem to be in the Stone Ages when it comes to IFE user experience and UI, and except for a few rare exceptions like Emirates. I'm wondering if finally we'll be able to bridge that gap between the expectation that has been set by the Apples of the world and just general web design in general, and try and drag IFE UX kicking and screaming into the 21st century. So hopefully someone can make them aware of how far they are behind the curve on that.
And I would mention something, is that if planes move to a full, bring your own device type, they should actually provide power, because
yeah, so true.
Because still, you can still find long-haul flights when the power is not in every seat, and that would obviously be a problem, because if you need to actually stream a movie for 12 hours in a row, good luck with any kind of tablet, honestly. So that's one thing they also should have. There was a friend of mine who used to work in a big, one of the big IFE providers in the world. I won't name it here because I don't know how. If that information is a privilege or not, but what he told me, I think that on very big airplanes like this 777 or the A380, the IFE system, the power that the IFE system uses is the equivalent of a building of, I think it was 15 floors. It's just amazing, the amount of power required just to make the IFE work. And we know that a plane is a self-contained unit in terms of energy. There's not like you gotta plug it somewhere.
Right.
So it's interesting. The other thing, obviously, is safety. I mean, we all know, and I know a less fun comment, but Swissair 11, which was it 1111, the one that crashed in '98, was apparently maybe due to an electrical issue with the wiring with the IFE. It becomes also extremely complex. You have to wire all the seats, etc., etc. And maybe having just a streaming system might also kind of make that all more easy. I don't know. Anyway, this is something we'll again address in the future because we like it anyway. Moving on to the question of the week. You handle that? The question of the week?
Sure. So one of the things that a lot of people ask when they're going on a flight is how old is the airplane going to be? And it's interesting, and I think people are looking at it more from a safety thing, which is, it's not really a thing. I mean, planes are very, very safe, but it is kind of interesting. And so there's a bunch of different ways that you can answer this question, both in the moment and beforehand. Beforehand, you can look at airfleets.net, which is an extraordinarily comprehensive database of commercial airline registration numbers, and it tells the general makeup of an airline's fleet, how many planes they have, down to the age of every single airplane in the fleet, and where that airplane has been in terms of previous owners, which is always really interesting, at least to people like me. Yes. So you can look at a plane and go, oh, it went here, and then I went to this airline in this country, and then I came back, and now I'm finally going to fly on it next week. There's also that app that we talked about last week, the Plane Finder app, and you click on any of those planes, and it will tell you when it was first rolled off the line and when it did its first flight. And I was watching last night. There was 2 BA flights flying almost right next to each other, one going London Cape Town and the other going London Johannesburg, so both heading in the same direction. One was a less than 1-year-old A380, and the other was a 24-year-old 747-400.
Wow! So
it's interesting to look at the average fleet age, but it is kind of interesting to see. And the final thing, and this is what I do with almost without exception, and Paul saw this when we flew to Warsaw a couple of months ago. On most airplanes, but very specifically the A3, 19, 20, and 21, as you walk onto the airplane, the door is obviously open, and on the inside of the door there's a little plate with the aircraft registration number and the date of manufacture, month and year. So you can just take a quick look, turn your head, and you can see exactly how old the airplane is. Without having to guess based on how it looks on the inside and the outside, you can get a very good sense of exactly how old it is.
I mean, this was for me an inception point, because since then, every time I fly, I actually try to locate that little plate and just to see.
It's just interesting, and I think almost every commercial airline has it or something like it in a very similar spot. But the A320 ones are the easiest to read because if you know where to look for them. But maybe we'll post a picture on Layovers so you can see exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly. And the last bit of the show, so we call the show HKG, so the airport from Hong Kong, an airport very dear to the heart of Alex because he used to live there. I've only flown there, so I will also let you take this one. Have you ever actually flown to the old one, Kai-Tak? Because that was something.
Okay, so yeah, Hong Kong was my home airport for 10 years, and so I flew into Kai-Tak many times. I went to school under the flight path, where every 90 seconds, without exaggeration, every 90 seconds, lessons would stop, plane goes over, carry on. And when I first got to the school, I was like, when I first got to this school, I was like, what is going on? And then it becomes a second nature as breathing. And remember, this is... I'm old. This was a long time ago, and these were in old, loud Lockheed L-1011 TriStars going over and that type of thing. And I also got to fly the runway 13 IGS approach in a Cathay 777-200 simulator, which was fun, a lot of fun. But and you know, they moved to Chek Lap Kok. What I wanted to mention today, which I think is kind of fun, is that uh, Hong Kong has one airport. It's not like London, which has 6 airports or anything like that. So when they moved them, they had to turn off one airport and turn on the next airport 7 hours later. So there was this extraordinary project to have the last flight out, which was Cathay flight to London, shut the airport down, move everything across one of the most crowded and congested cities on the planet to welcome another Cathay flight 7 hours later. And it was 1,000 vehicles and barges kind of, you know, everybody's going, okay, it's gone, run, 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 go across the city. The whole city was shut down. And, you know, all things considered, it went almost flawlessly. And they managed to open up this new airport 7 hours later, and the old airport shut down. There were operational things run out of Kai Tak for a few months after that, like cargo data, which actually was one of the reasons why the cargo terminal at Kai Tak, or pardon me, at Chek Lap Kok was a bit of a troublemaker at the beginning. But yeah, it was it was an amazing feat of logistics and operations for which I think everybody involved should be immensely proud. But both airports were and are world class, really extraordinary feats of engineering. They had to level 2 islands in Hong Kong. And
Yeah, what's about it? It's partly reclaimed land, right?
yeah, absolutely. Chek Lap Kok is kind of a man-made construction as an island, which is.
But the approach is not as.
No, it's not nearly as cool as it was, but it's pretty, because you fly through what is now almost a man-made valley, so it is quite susceptible to downdrafts. And actually, it's taken out the occasional airplane. I don't know if you remember the Mandarin Airlines MD-11, MD-11 or DC-10 that flipped over and landed. That was because of this weird artificial weather system that had taken place. But there are really great airports worth just flying into, just for the sake of it.
Well, we might actually both fly there soon this year, so that will be a nice experience, maybe actually together. I think we are at the end of that runway, actually, because it's the end of the show. I remember saying at the beginning of the first show that we'll do 25 minutes. We kind of very quickly saw that both of us like to talk about it, so we'll do actually shows that run between 40 and 60 minutes because we have a lot to say.
Yeah.
So that's a new expectation. We run through 60 this time, so I think we're gonna just say goodbye, and I'll see you next week, Alex. Right?
And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and subscribe to the podcast, and we'll talk to you all next week.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone. Cheers.
Bye.
Good speak.